In this fourth segment, we'll talk about software deployment, the process of moving our software from the lab, from our office, from our development facility to our user, whether it's a hospital, a home, a mobile device, or whatever we have to deploy to. So let's reorient ourselves. We've been using this V model as our roadmap for the entire class at this beginning of week 5. And we're now going to talk about these last 3 steps in the process. In this segment, we're going to talk about deployment. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about maintenance and retirement. So as with everything else in this class, even though this process comes at the end, we have to think about this from the beginning. We have to think about our deployment when the project begins. If there is no valid path to deploying our software, we might as well stop. And this is a particular problem with mobile applications with App Store gatekeepers. So as many people have discovered over the years, if your target audience is a mobile platform and you need to get approval from either Apple or Google or both for your app to be deployed, if there's something about your app that prevents it from getting approval from Apple and Google, you have a serious problem. And if you cannot figure out how that is going to work, you should not develop your app in the first place. So this is the sort of thing you have to often think about in the beginning. Otherwise, many hours and much treasure will be wasted. So we know that we can deploy our app. What is the last few steps in the process? The first is to ensure that the verification is completed, that we know that the software works correctly. We need to check that the documentation is finalized. Remember, the documentation is part of the device. We need to come up with a list of anomalies, those things that may fail occasionally for whatever particular reason. And we need to have a version number, the processes, and all of those things that are required to ensure reliable delivery. This is how we build the software, this is how we package the software, this is how we deploy the software. This is part of the process. So we used the word anomalies in the last slide, so let's expand on that. What are anomalies? So the standard IC 62304 define an anomaly as any condition that deviates from the expected based on requirement specifications, design document standards, etc., or from someone's perceptions or experiences. Anomalies may be found during, but not limited to, the review, test, analysis, compilation, or use of software products or applicable documentation. So anomalies are things that cause problems to our software. So if we have an image that of a particular kind, the software fails. In a particular circumstance, we may have a problem. These are all anomalous conditions, and we need to know what they are and document them and let our user know ahead of time so they can know what the pitfalls are and figure out how to avoid them. So prior to deployment, we really need to make sure that everything is in order. We're ready, we're gift wrapping our software and ready to deliver it to our user. So delivery and installation. Often medical software is supplied with a pre-configured workstation with the software, at which point in our manufacturing facility, in a lab, we'll install it on a workstation, configure everything, and what we deliver is in fact a workstation. And in hospitals, you will see this many times. You'll walk into a room and you'll see 4 computers each running a single piece of software, because that piece of software was validated, verified and validated on a particular piece of hardware, and it's delivered together with a particular computer to ensure that it works reliably. So this way they don't have to worry about variations in the hardware, what graphics card, how much memory. It comes with a pre-configured workstation. So that sometimes is the case. We have to ensure that the software is correctly installed on a workstation at the side, assuming that this is what we're doing, whether it's a new workstation or an existing workstation. We have to perform user training. User training is also part of the device. Documentation and user training are part of what we deliver. And then we have to do setup and configuration. We have to configure the software to function in the user's environment. We have to interface with hospital IT, make sure we have network or database access or whatever else is required. And we need to document the settings for the software. When we install the software, what flags are on, what modes are operational, whatever preferences we set up, those also need to be documented. So if something happens, we need to be able to go back and replicate the process. The other issues in deployment is that we have to think about repeatability. You have to be able to repeat this process. We have to have a process that permits repeatable software deployment. We have to have a procedure. So when the software is taken to a facility, we have to have a process that says, this is what you do. You install the software, you configure the network, you enable this flag, you disable this, you connect to the database, you perform the appropriate tests. We have to have a list of things that somebody can go in and do the same every time, okay? It's a serious process. We have to have serious plans. And this includes the delivery and the installation, the setup, the configuration, and also a process now for maintenance. Who do they call when something goes wrong? How do they file complaints? And as we will talk in the next segment when it comes to maintenance, how do we receive those complaints and how do we act on them? All of that is an important part of the process. And as always, we'll talk about risk management. The customer needs to be made aware of hazards and residual risks. So for example, there's a famous example of TERAC 25 when the error was malfunction 54. Now, nobody in the room knew what malfunction 54 was. Malfunction 54 apparently meant that if you push this button, you're going to deliver a lethal dose of radiation to a patient. Obviously, our users need to know what messages such as malfunction 54 mean, because that's a source of hazard and residual risk. We have done a risk management process. When we develop the software, we know what's left, and we need to make our users aware, especially if our risk management depends on sending a message to the users, be careful, something could go wrong here. That should be very clearly articulated and part of the training and the documentation. And failure to inform the customer of potential hazards, as was the case with the TERAC, can lead to catastrophic results. So this is not something we want to do. In conclusion, our software is a medical device. It's a serious product for serious use. It is not something that someone downloads, installs, and hope that everything goes well. There are exceptions to that with mobile apps, but for the most part, we're talking about something that we deliver in person, we install and configure in person. We need to ensure that our user has all the information necessary and hands-on support to install, configure the software, and be aware of its limitations and any risks associated with its use. And once we deliver the software and install it, we need to monitor it. So if we go to the medical device regulation of 2017, we have this section on post-market clinical follow-up, and it's worth reading a little bit from this. So PMCF shall be understood to be a continuous process. Let me underline continuous. This is not a one-off process. For as long as the device is on the market, this has to be happening. That updates the clinical evaluation and shall be addressed in the manufacturer's post-market surveillance plan. The plan that you submit to say, okay, this is how I'm going to monitor my device once we get approval. When conducting PMCF, the manufacturer proactively collect and evaluate clinical data from the use in or humans of a device with the aim of confirming the safety and performance throughout the expected lifetime of the device, of ensuring the continued acceptability of identifying risk, and detecting emerging risks on the basis of factual evidence. So our software is a medical device. We deliver it to our users, but we have to keep an eye on it. We have to maintain vigilance, we have to detect emerging problems, and we have to take action to address those problems. And this will lead us naturally into the discussion in the next section on maintenance of our medical software. Thank you.